Kamala Harris is providing today a look at her economic policy, and she's talking about a new child care tax credit or a child tax credit. She's talking about, and I don't know how this is going to be possible, but price gouging at grocery stores and talking to food producers. She's talking about giving first time home buyers as much as $25,000 for a down payment on a home. She's talking about making sure that one of her first priorities in her first 100 days in office would be to kickstart the construction of affordable homes across America. What do you make of this?
Yeah, I mean, look, these are campaign promises, pie in the sky, a lot of them, but it's talking about the right thing for especially for progressives ahead of her Democratic convention, where they're going to try and project the same unity that Republicans did in Milwaukee last month. Of course, there's a different energy about this convention than we had expected last month when we were in Milwaukee. So we didn't even anticipate that it would be this type of a convention that we were headed toward this coming week. So I think these are important, markers for where she stands
Yeah.
on issues and the kind of administration that she's going to want to have. I don't see that each and every one of these are going to happen. And what are they going to do? Republicans are going to say she's going to have to raise taxes. Democrats are going to come back and say, no, we don't have to raise taxes. We just have to get rid of the Trump tax cuts to the most wealthy among us and corporations, because those are the real beneficiaries of the Trump tax cuts. They really helped out big business and corporations. And I think she's trying to frame grocery stores and grocery chains specifically as big grocery, right? I mean, we talk about
Mm-hmm.
big oil, we talk about big ag. Well, we haven't heard too much about big grocery. And big grocery, she is alleging, is part of the problem for why it costs a little bit more than it did before, and in many cases a lot more, to buy a loaf of bread and a dozen eggs. Now, on the other side, you're getting a lot of exaggeration as well, as could be expected. There's going to be
Yeah.
an exaggeration from both sides in an election year.
Anything you want to say about Trump's weird, I'll call it, I thought it was a weird, I watched the full hour and a half of it, press conference that he gave in front of his golf clubhouse in Bedminster, New Jersey. He did talk about the economy, if only to tear down what's happening, not to really present any policies of his own.
Yeah,
Um,
you
yeah.
know what Trump has been doing, and I'm starting to see this now. Uh, Unbeknownst to most Americans, Trump has been giving this type of speech almost on a weekly or at least
Yeah.
bi-monthly way um, over the course of the entirety of the Biden administration. So he's going to places and he's going to friendly places, and he's essentially giving this speech. Well, I've been hearing them because I've been there, and the people that follow him most closely have been there as well. But a lot of press wasn't going to these things after a certain while, because he was a former president and he wasn't making big news until he said that he was going to run again. And then now that he is the nominee of the Republican Party, people are paying closer attention. It's
Yeah.
no different than what he's been doing for the past, I would say, 2.5, 3 years. And it rambles and it goes in these directions.
Mhm.
But his aim right now should be to bring people into his tent. And what he's doing still is he's speaking to his very, very devoted choir. But this is not going to expand the membership in that choir. And that's what Donald Trump needs
Mhm.
to do if he wants to be president again.
He seems almost indignant with the I'm entitled to launch personal attacks against Kamala Harris, not listening to people who are saying what you just said, which is you're not bringing more people to the tent with this kind of business.
Right. I mean, that was, and you can understand why Trump would say he should do that, because Trump, when he was the candidate, when he was the nominee, and when he was in 2016 and running against Hillary Clinton, and this kind of behavior was novel, and people found it in its own weird way compelling. When that was going on, they thought that, oh, okay, this is working. We're going to go with it. But the charm has worn off of that.
Yeah.
He is fighting uphill now in a way he hasn't been doing in the past several months. And like we just talked about, Kim, he's trying to get voters that he didn't have before, and that this is his path to that. That he thinks this is his path to that may be understandable, but he's got to listen to the other people in the room.
Lastly, I'll ask you about the Democratic National Convention and what we may be expecting from next week.
Right. This is where curmudgeonly Michael comes out. I'm nothing right? I mean, you'll get some speeches that are overanalyzed, broken apart. You'll hear people on different networks say he hit a home run or she hit a home run about Kamala Harris. You'll say that he struck out or she struck out when they give their speeches from other right wing
Mhm.
outlets. I'm always I always lower the bar for these things. They're like conventions of any kind, right? I
Yeah.
mean, everybody who's like-minded goes. If you go to a dental convention, a lot of dentists have a good time learning about new technology. Well, that's what Democrats do and Republicans do when they have these things. Nothing is really established at these places unless somebody gives a really great speech that sets them up for 4 years from now, which is quite possible. But I think people are going to see Kamala Harris, the vice president, give a speech that's going to matter more than any she's probably ever given to her party, certainly. And that in and of itself will be interesting. But I wouldn't expect that by Labor Day you'll be thinking about that speech anymore.
What I understand is that for the first time, they're making the Democratic National Convention available across all different platforms. It'll be on Facebook and X and YouTube and, traditional media. This thing will be everywhere.
Yeah, it will, and there'll be a lot of eyeballs. Whether or not
Yeah.
they're able to tell you how many eyeballs because of how diffuse that is, I don't know,
Right.
because I don't know the technology, the Nielsen-like technology. But a
Sure.
lot of people are going to be watching. There's going to be a lot of fascination in what will be, like I said, Kamala Harris's biggest speech of her life. But again, as big as it is, and as overanalyzed, and as much as you and I and Mark will talk about it next
Yeah.
Friday, it's still what it is, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and that's what you can't run away from, the fact that this is just a convention, and they'll be talking about other things later on. The debates will, of course, obscure all of that,
Michael,
by the way, unless there's a disaster, in which case,
sure. Of
yeah.
course. And then we're diverted.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell, you'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.